Or May, right? I lose track of time, sorry. So Kevin is gonna be explaining about the Williams Farm with a hell of a day. We worked there for the time you were how old?
About 12.
We've done it already.
So, but I wanna remind everybody, our next presentation is June 28th, and it will be at the Congregational Church. This is the 215th year of the Congregational Church in Candor.
Oh my.
The oldest church in Candor.
Oh,
Actually, I think they're turning 216 maybe before we have our meeting in June. So there'll be a lot of information. It was started by people who came here from Farmington, Connecticut. And so its official name is the Farmington Society. And so, Penny Melvin will be speaking and will be in the church and he'll show us different things. So 7 o'clock in the church, Congregational Church. And I think that's all the messages I have, unless someone has something different they need to say.
Remind about the yard sale.
Oh, yes, we are having a yard sale in July 27th, Saturday, in the Town Hall Pavilion. And we will take donations the evening before, Friday evening, I believe, starting at 5 till about 8. And, so if you got anything you're wanting to get rid of, bring it down. We really count on everybody's, support for our fundraisers. We don't have a lot of members, and the members don't pay for everything, and just to keep our general operating expenses going, we need to do fundraisers. And then we're fixing up the History Center at 25 Main Street. We are using grant money for that. Yes.
How successful was your barbecue?
I think we made about $700. We split it with the other organization, Misfits.
Oh, okay.
Nancy, on the yard sale, no electronics or clothing.
Right.
No electronics.
No electronics or clothing. We don't need that. All right? Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Wait till it's done. I've been promising Nancy that I was gonna do this for a long time, so I finally got around to it, and thank you for the opportunity. Really gonna do a little bit of a history on the Williams Farm. Some of you know and some of you don't know that Grandma Williams, Ruth, called it Poverty Hollow. And they did all right, but that was always her mantra at the farm, was that they were in Poverty Hollow there. Just working at it. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is go back and look at a little bit of family history. This is based on an interview that Don, that's my father's uncle, Don Williams, did with Edward Thomas Williams back in 1954. Edward says that he was the son of Louis LeTate and Molly Price. And Louis lived in France. He was born in France. He was a ship's cook. He worked at the Hotel Astor in New York City and apparently spoke several languages. And Molly was born in Prince Edward Island of English Welsh descent. And she apparently returned to PEI after Louis passed away. Edward, their son, was born in 1875, and after Louis died, they put him and a brother, Walter, in an orphanage in New York City. We speculate that Molly changed Edward's name to Williams because that was her mother's family name. And
Let's take went to Williams.
right, so we think it's because the French weren't really held in high regard at that time. That's only, we don't know why. So anyway, Edward was born in New York City in 1875, and he was placed on an orphan train in 1882 at 7 years old. And he was selected by Steve Halstead and his wife Tilly as a foster child in Tampico, Illinois. He left the farm at the age of 18 and went to New York City to try and find family. Had no luck. Then he joined the Navy. He jumped ship. He joined the Merchant Marines. That ship was shipwrecked somewhere. And anyway, wound up going back to the Halstead farm at the age of 21. He married Lovey Dora Reed. Some of you have heard that who was of Scot-Irish descent in Sterling, Illinois. She was 24, he was 24. They had 2 children, Warren,
Oh,
right, you remember Warren, that's Grandpa's brother, and Charles, Chuck, born in 1904. Edward, with the family, worked on various farms throughout the West. We found him in Idaho, we found him in Kansas, we found him in Minnesota. So he got around. And apparently he lived in a sod house, and the family lived in a sod house in Kansas for a short time.
Did he ever have any, did he know where his brother went?
No, he couldn't find Walter, didn't, and that's, you gave me some documentation that maybe we can look something up there, but I haven't had a chance to do that, so. So no, he never found anything like that. So in 1912, they were living in Wheaton, Minnesota. He was 37 years old. And in the early April of 1913, he purchases the Lovejoy farm in Candor, New York.
Lovejoy, we know that.
Yeah, so that original farm area there was about 40 acres apparently, and that was the Lovejoy farm. That's all I know. I never had a chance to look at any of their deeds or anything like that, but, so then Warren and Charles go to the Hubbardtown School for 2 years, and then right after that, the Candor High School was established, and Warren graduated from Candor in 1919 at the age of 18, and he married Pauline Hover. Some of you know who Pauline is, and they went off to start what I think was called the Paint Bucket in Binghamton. It was a hardware store, paint store. Chuck never graduated. They think he went through at least 9th grade, but at the age of 19, well, Chuck was 23 and Ruth was 19. He married Ruth Thomas.
That's your grandma.
That was my grandma, right. She was the daughter of Henry Thomas and Mary Jane Hornbrook, and they're buried up on cemetery, up on the hill. No,
Up by Barton?
yeah, up by Bob Barton. Yeah. Isn't that Fairfield or something?
Yeah.
There's one on Fairfield Road.
Okay, well, anyway, up in the Fairfield area, their grave is up there, and they made it a point to distinguish on their tombstone that they were from Cornwall, England. So. Anyways, they had 4 kids: Mary, Dorothy, Aunt Doe, everybody knows Aunt Doe, Jack, and Dick, my dad. So over the years, Chuck enlarged the farm from about 40 acres to 400 plus acres, and went from about 20 cows to 90 in his time. Plus they had dry cows. He upgraded the farm. He added a bunch of additions, a bulk feed system. He went from bulk tanks to the pipeline milking system, added 4 silos, lots of equipment. I've got some information on that. He was really an excellent welder. He was a mechanic. He had uncanny mechanical skills. He made pretty much everything that he had to. He didn't like to buy stuff, so he would make it.
Your grandma would have let it.
So, Edward and Lovey lived with Grandma and Grandpa in the main farm, in the main house, up until they passed away. I think from what David has told me that Edward may have traveled a little bit off and on after Lovey passed, but they had basically a duplex. They had a separate kitchen and a bedroom and a sitting area in the main house. And anyways, Ruth named the place Poverty Hollow. I think because she always thought they could have made more money, but they did all right. Ruth was really the heart of the operation. She died only in 2000. She was 92. She was hospitalized during the latter part of that time. Although raising the 4 kids, she always fed the calves in the morning. To me, she always had the best breakfast ready after chores. I think Dave would attest to that. Always had a great lunch and dinners. She seemed to do all of that and still have time for the Grange. She was very active with the church, and she raised 4 kids. So Chuck was the visionary. He was the engineer. He died at 75 years old, but he milked, he fixed, he built, he planted, he harvested, he did animal care, and he always had a garden. So he was a pretty busy guy. He was always a jokester, had time for the kids and grandkids, and he still made time for the Grange. He was an active member of the Grange. He was on the school board for some amount of time.
Church.
And sometimes he went to church.
For Rob would get mad.
Chuck and Dwight built a sawmill, basically powered by a school bus motor and transmission. I remember Grandpa saying it ran best in second gear. And toward the end of his time, they built the Sunday school wing at McHenry. So McAnder's finest had an opportunity to work with Chuck.
Kevin, the picture.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Chuck and Ruth.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're out in the field somewhere. I found that in a bunch of slides that Aunt Dorothy had. So I know that they had a camera and they did take some pictures, but there's missing slides. I don't know where they are. We used to sit and watch slideshows with Grandma and Grandpa, and they would say, "No, Chuck, that's not where that was. That was over here." So as far as the history goes, I've just got some bullets here of things that happened. From a picture standpoint, this is Edward, this is Ruth, this is Chuck. I don't know who these 3 are, but this is Dick and Jack and Mary and Dorothy. And this is a picture of the sawmill. Actually, this is a picture of the sawmill after they moved it from the sawmill that was near the tenant house to a building that they built up above there. But you can see the school bus motor, the transmission. It had a belt drive. There's the saw blade there, and he had a carriage that would go back and forth. And he had it adjusted so that every click on this lever was 1 inch of depth of the cut. So he had it pretty well figured out. So as far as the land pieces go, I know that there was talk always of the Lovejoy piece, which was the original farm. There was the Holcomb piece, and I'm not exactly sure where that was. There was the Eddie Roberts piece, and ultimately some of that Eddie Roberts piece was bought, but they always kind of shared that land. The Robertses were very, very close with the Williamses, and we always had to drive through the Eddie Roberts piece to get to the back fields over by the golf course. But anyway, he started with 20 cows in the original barn. They ran everything on a generator until the 40s. My father remembers when rural electrification came through, and he was born in 35, so he had been at least 5 years old to remember that. So I'm kind of guessing that's about when the rural electrification happened here. Up until the early 50s, he did everything with the John Deere B. If you're familiar with a John Deere B, hand clutch, hand throttle, 2-cylinder. I'll have a picture of it. I was driving that thing when I was 10 years old. But anyways, after that, and Dave can attest that in 52, they had an international combine, baler, they had the Farmall 400, that Dave had the privilege of driving home brand new from school. They bought it at Cavatagas, which is now the ambulance garage.
Yeah. I didn't drove it over to school. I didn't call it to become the English
Okay, so there were 2 houses on the property. One, what they called the main house, which was next to the barn, and it was a tenant house, which was, they used it actually as a grain storage building for a while, but then modified it to, hold the tenant farmers that were coming in later on. Again, I talked about the sawmill, picture here. With that, they made several additions to the barn, all with rough cut lumber off of the farm, mostly hemlock, pine. But anyways, they added a lot of features you can see later on. And then by the 70s, they were milking 90 cows a day. A barn fire took the old barn that was above the tenant house, and it ate up the John Deere B. That was about 1975. But by that time, he had a bunch of tractors already. Early years, Ed and Bill Thomas, which was Grandma Ruth's brothers, helped with the crops in farming. And Gene Thomas worked for Chuck in the early 50s. Dave King, as we said before, lived on the farm from 11 to 17 roughly, right? And he was really Chuck's right-hand man at that time. Chuck insisted that David attend school still.
I didn't want to.
But he did set up his social security number. He made him a member of the Bandler Styles and Kai Suit Club. And Dave did miss school entirely, including a football season, after Chuck got his hand stuck in the planer.
Ouch.
And from that point on, Chuck could never shake your hand without, he always had one finger that was kind of bent over. So you knew when you were shaking Grandpa's hand, because that one finger would poke you right in the palm. But he only missed a couple days of milking that you probably covered for him.
I remember that finger, it was stretched out and curved up, right?
Well, that was the one. The other one was down.
Oh, okay,
in.
I heard that you got that caught in like a chain on the manure spreader or something, that went around the sprocket.
No, the major accident with his right hand was the planer.
Okay.
It was pretty mashed up.
And he had more than one accident with the planer.
Slow learner, huh?
So really, Dave is family. He really helped out a lot, and I'd say Tom was a big piece of the farm too. And I have a little comment about Mr. King as well.
What was that?
So you aren't so surprised later.
So, as Chuck aged and the kids moved on to school and whatever, he had a number of folks work for him. Just to point this out, that's Dave. That's Dave King. That's Dorothy. This is Uncle Jack and Aunt Betty, his wife. And I think that's my cousin Charles, he's passed away.
That cancer guy in the middle of the bottom.
That long-haired freak is,
Who's that? You, Kevin?
that's me.
Yeah.
Long-haired freak.
That's me.
Yeah.
So Dick Ward worked summer hang. I think Nancy had a story that he missed vacation.
Yeah, he had to stay and work,
Stay
we
and
all
work.
went on vacation.
Stayed and worked, so, you
If you
know.
hadn't been in the farmhouse, you might think that was a school bus behind you.
In here?
Yeah.
That's the house we're in right now, actually. Gene Thomas worked there in the 50s. Bill and Sam Osowski lived on the farm for a while, until he took over the Osowski farm. Chuck and Ruth moved to the tenant house in the early 60s, and around that time, both Pat Sullivan and Danny Sullivan worked for them. You can interject anytime.
You're covered it all.
George Thomas family was there. The Furman family for a short time. George Thomas came back. My dad took over management of the farm in about 74. He was working at IBM, but we spent a lot of weekends fixing equipment. It's hard to get anybody that's really just a tenant farmer to take care of your equipment, so we wound up doing a lot of that. Talma family came in for the first time roughly 74. Tom King and Warlock Shaver really ran the farm for quite some time. And really, that was probably the peak of the production at the time of that farm. Really, you guys did yeoman's work there. Actually, Danny Estelle and I actually got paid to work on the farm the summer of '77 in between, our years at college. And Eric Halstead was there. They then moved to New Hampshire in '79, and right about, just before that, the Talma family came in, and I think Jamie Van Ostrom was working with the Talma family.
I helped out Eric.
Did you? You
Yes.
helped Eric?
Yes,
Okay.
I rode my motorcycle over the hill and we worked.
Cool, didn't know that, good for you. You have a piece of the history.
Yeah.
They sold off the cows and the equipment in '88. The barn was getting in real disrepair at the time, and, again, it's hard to run a farm when you're living in New Hampshire, let alone 2 miles away. So, Tom Wasowski took over and was, he just had some beef cows on the farm for a while. And then Fallow Hollow, bought the farm out in 1996, and I'll talk about that. Martha had a previous engagement, that's my sister, and so I'm kind of filling in on the history of the Fallow Hollow, which was
Kevin,
actually the
before
last
you move
one.
on, so
Sure.
that's Chuck and Ruth right
Chuck
here?
and Ruth, right.
And Kevin.
That was actually in 1976, I think that was my graduation.
Yeah. Most likely.
Okay, so here's some slides that I did find, actually this was from Aunt Dorothy, Bill Wasowski. This is Lovey Dora, my great-grandmother, and then there's Dick and Jack and Mary and Dorothy. And then I think I showed this before, but, and there's Dorothy doing something up a scaffolding on the side of the barn. He's obviously put some new. And she's in a dress. Anyway, this is a little bit of a shot of the barn. The original silo was on the house side. You'll see later on that the silos are now over here. Again, this is some of the kids. There's Dick and Dorothy and Mary and Jack. I think the other kids, I think are cousins, but I don't know who they are. Exactly. And then of course the 4 kids on the pond that was just above the barn. So I did find some slides out of Mary Lou Van Scoy's attic. And this was obviously after I was born. I'm not sure who took them. I don't know if it was my mom or maybe Mary Lou, I'm not sure. But anyway, picture of the barn from the tenant house. This is Grandpa as they were adding on the granary. He had a big grain bin that he put in here for bulk grain. Here's the farm wall and the combine, and that's me with Dorothy. Just a picture of a snowfall going up the side driveway, and that's the old John Deere B with me and my dad. So you can see the barn grew. This was from Dorothy's house. She had this painting, if you will, on the wall. And back in the day, there was a guy that went around with an airplane and took pictures. And then they would touch it up with colors and paint. And so that's a picture of a painted picture. So it's not real, that's real great. But you can see that, here's 1, 2, 4 silos. You can see the addition here. I think the original barn might have been here because the downstairs is where the original equipment was for milking. Do you remember any of that?
The other end was the original end.
Oh, this end?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And see where the house is?
Yeah.
Just to your left, that's where the original
Silo was over on this side.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Well, that's a good.
And then, so there's, all the silos went in, the addition went in. This is what was famously called the shit chute. Grandpa was able to put in drop cleaners with poured concrete at a 2nd story level, which was kind of unheard of at the time, but he did it. And then he had a belt system that would clear the drops that would unload into a spreader that you could back in here. The theory was is that you're gonna be able to keep the weather off and not get so soupy down in there, but
Didn't work.
it didn't work.
I remember, I fell over one time getting the cows to the barn and I'm sitting there with my hands on there in the muck and mud about this far from my
Yes,
face.
yes,
yes.
Somebody came over and picked me up.
It
We
turns
lived
out
through
that
a
there was a spring that really kind of ran all the way underneath the barn. And it collected down here, no matter what. Probably the worst job that I can recall as I was on the farm was having to fix the drop cleaner that was inside here. The chain would often fall off and you'd have to reach up and get the chain back on the gear drive. All
That
the
nice little
while that
snap.
the stuff is running down your arms.
Make good deal.
You needed a shower after that.
Builds character.
So, just for this, these are some pictures that, this is when the barn was really kind of falling in disrepair already. You can see that the tops of the silos are down, none of the windows are in, but I got these pictures from Nancy. I think they must have been, maybe Martha got them or whatever.
I don't know, someone just gave me
Yeah.
the historical society.
So you can see the size of the facility and, you know, kind of how it was laid out, but these are fairly run down, if you will.
No, that barn's completely gone.
It's gone. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute, but, so rural electrification in the 40s, I think that's about the right time frame. They added the granary, which was on this end for bulk grain. They wound up with the 4 silos. They went from milk cans to bulk tanks to pipelines. The combine, apparently the boys did a lot of combine around Tioga County. At one time, they must have been one of the only folks with a combine. And then the cleaner piece, we always had to drive through there and finally wound up buying it. I talked about the shit shoe. Everybody has a story about hauling hay off the hill.
That's a steep hill.
It was a steep hill.
I will share that driving through there, Dorothy always used to point up the hill and say, we used to take hay off that steep hill. She would say that all the time when we were driving.
It was a trip. So you have a load of hay and using either the John Deere B or some other small tractor. And the wheels, you'd be going down the hill and the wheels would be turning backwards to try and keep it from going
Running over you, yeah.
And I think you had a story where actually the hitch pin broke on it.
And Dick was driving the John Deere B, the hitch pin broke. I was on the wagon, and of course, when the wagon's gonna go forward, it's gonna climb the wheels. And Dick and I both ended up on the hood of the tractor
And lived.
and lived.
DRB was a tricycle, wasn't it?
Yes.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with tricycle.
No, that didn't have anything to do with it. It was an underweight tractor with an overweight.
Right.
And we put 30 extra.
And that bolt
wheels on
has seen a lot of
it.
trucking.
So anyway, he grew it from a John Deere B, then the Farmall 400. When I was there, they had the 400 and the Massey Ferguson 1080. And at the end of the career on the farm, they had a big 4-wheel drive John Deere. That was their workhorse. Many farm families ran through there. Dick ran the place in the 70s. He moved to New Hampshire in 79, and then Fallow Hollow came in and purchased the land and everything to try and avoid taxes and whatnot with Ruth in 96. And the cattle and equipment was sold off in 86. And the Deer Farm became a limited liability corporation in 97. And this is Fallow Hollow. So again, Martha sends her best. She was tied up at another meeting for work today. Just some pictures. That's probably one of the best of the deer that they had up there. It was a nice big stag.
She might said a white one got loose.
Oh, there was white ones. There was king's deer, queen's deer. There was the knight's black nights and white nights.
But somebody said a white one got out and was still up there
Yeah.
until just a few years
Yeah,
ago.
it was about 6 months ago, and that was gonna be, Ben's trophy deer, so they made it his trophy deer. So they put in 9 miles of fence, and you can see some of the fence here, 5 miles of perimeter around the farm. At the peak of their career there, they had 2,000 head of deer. They had rabbits, they had pheasants, they had turkeys, they had chickens. And they had a couple of customers in New York City. There were restaurants that specialized in game, venison especially. Those restaurants went down in 9/11. They were right near the World Trade Center. So that was a tough thing for them to work through. From that point on, they really worked hard to find market share and different co-ops that were into the venison market. During that time, they won the 2000 Governor's Award for Agritourism. 2002, chronic wasting disease came across the Mississippi. That was a disease that affected the whitetail population especially. And so they became very regulatory, the state became very regulatory on any of the deer that were in the area, and they had to do vaccinations and they had to test them. It was like a tuberculosis kind of a test. So they had a handling facility that they had to go in and they would literally shave the shoulder of the deer and poke it and then check it a week later to make sure that it had the right scabs. I don't even know. So that was a real problem. They really restricted the shipping and marketing at that time. The Goodsells had been living in the tenant house and they moved to the farmhouse after my dad helped them to remodel. And they got recognition from National Geographic as an agro-tourism kind of facility. The barn went down in 2006. By that time, the roof was leaking, the floors were pretty saggy. It had fallen in real disrepair. Martha and Brian tried planting a bunch of Christmas trees to try and thwart the natural gas move that was coming. That didn't pan out, but they still have Christmas trees. So anyway, taxes, laws, regulations kind of put Hollow out of business. And currently they're renting the land, they're grazing some cows and horses out there. But that's from whence it come back to whence it was. These are just some shots of the deer farm. I showed you the sawmill before. That's my dad driving the tractor that they have up there now. This is a nice, I always thought this was a nice shot of the farm. You can see the silo roof is caved in already.
That's from your grandma and grandpa's, right?
This is from, yes, this is from the tenant house is what they call it, yeah. And this is the fence that they put 9 miles of. Brown Robinson was involved with some of that work. And I know they had hunting on the farm a couple of times. I think the Atlattle folks, right?
Yeah.
Did some hunting there.
Yeah.
Atlo, you mean, you went like this, like javelin?
Oh, okay. It's a spear that has a thrower handle.
Every now and then we got one.
Just some more pictures. They had a post, and trust me, there are plenty of rock on Poverty Hollow Farm. This is just a panoramic. You can see there's a bunch of deer in there, and that's a nice shot. Okay.
Why did you take the barn down?
Why?
Yeah,
It was, they hadn't maintained it.
That was beyond repair.
It was in disrepair. The floor was sagging. It was not safe. So they tore it down. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have seen it, make it a brewery or something.
Way to go, Kev, let's go.
Anyway, so as an epilogue, I just had one chart in here about my dad, about Dick Williams. Again, he was born in 35, to Chuck and Ruth. He was the valedictorian of Candor High School in 52. He got his bachelor's in mechanical engineering at RPI, and then he made it to captain in the U.S. Air Force. He did ROTC as well as the reserves, and married Emily in 1956, and I was born in 58. And Emily died in 61, and then he married Yvonne Kowalczyk, and along came Martha, Laura, and Paul, which are my brothers and sisters, half-brother sisters. He worked at IBM, or the Glendale Labs, from 60 to 79 as various jobs. He did circuit board packaging work, he did printer work, he did a number of things there. Was doing quite well, but he had a vision. He had a vision for his own company. And he moved to New Hampshire to avoid state law, taxes, and that kind of stuff. He became the vice president of what was called Centronics, and another company called Data Products. And then he established his own company called Prestec in 1988. And he was there as the CEO and president of Prestec from 88 to 2003. He was called the father of digital printing. He was able to take digital images and burn a plate, pick up the ink, and print high speed, high tech. You know, he got to where the image was as good as a National Geographic magazine, and that was unheard of. So he has 54 patents to his own name and hundreds of patents that went along with Prestec. He was called the New Hampshire Businessman of the Year in '98. The Carey Award is an award from RIT, actually, for the advancements in printing. And in 2008, he died of a glioblastoma. He has 6 grandkids, and this is wrong. There's now 8 grades with 1 on the way.
Who's on the way?
The one, who's still pregnant?
Ben,
Ben's,
Yep.
Ben's, well,
Yeah.
Bella.
Bella,
Bella.
right. And Nate just had a son, so it's 9 and 1 rather than 8 and 2. So, that's all I have for you. Any?
Nice.
I think Steve
I worked here for quite a few years, and if you knew the ingenuity of Chuck, Kevin, can you put the barn back up? He didn't go out and buy
I got it.
that one. Oh, that was good.
This one?
Yeah. When I worked there in the mid-50s, this part of the barn was added on so that they could add more cows. He didn't go out and buy trusses. He laid them out on the floor, one truss after another, they go up on the roof, and then I got to ride those up when you fasten them to the one that was next to it. And he did all this with 2 tractors on his farm, from just a farm that was 20 cows to 90-some. It was just, every day it was wonderful working with him. I learned more there than I did at school.
Yeah.
And it was a great, great experience for me.
Dave, you must have more stories.
And some of them are true.
Why ruin a good story with the truth?
One time, Ruth and Chuck were not people that went away on vacation. And at that time, Nick's father was home. I was there, and Gene Thomas worked there. And we were digging the pit for this Unadilla silo there. And we were to dig this pit. We had a tripod set up. We did it all with 5-gallon pails of dirt and moser stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was one of my jobs. And the other job is they were to put a new seal in the John Deere B, new brakes, and do rings, and valves, and everything on. Well, Emily was there a lot. And several other girls, and you could go to the brush and pallet and go in and get a 6-pack of beer at a time.
Yeah.
And that often was my job. You'd make it, you go back, you get out, oh, I'm here for Gene, no, I'm here for Dick. I'm here for Carl Newman. All these kind of things went on, and it was a learning experience for me. I was younger, and then most all these were college.
Did you learn how to drink beer?
Well, I wasn't really much of a beer drinker, but we knew they were coming home on Thursday, and there were beer cans everywhere. And about mid-afternoon till sometimes dark, there was a lot of people that really didn't work on the farm there, that were swimming in that pond. And it was hot and humid, and we finished up doing the pit one night, and Dick says, well, I think you deserve a beer. So I was drinking a beer, and I was just getting ready to have my second one. I was leaning up against the Bolt milk tank, which was cool, and through the door came Ruth and Chuck. Richard was at the basin washing the milking machines, and Gene just came in and said, I got all the cows in the night pasture. And all of us just, we turned as white as sheet. And we knew we were in trouble. The only thing Ruth really said was, I'm disappointed in the three of you. We have never taken vacation before, now we have, and you guys are disappointed. You don't know how bad us guys thought.
I bet. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, she said, I'm going in and fix a meal. You get some feed bags, pick up all of these beer cans. Get everything, get them out of my house, everything. I'll fix your meal, and we're never gonna talk about this again. And we didn't. The beer cans were gone the next day, the John Deere got put back together. Ruth and Chuck never, ever again spoke about it.
That's cute.
And some of the other stories I can't tell. Oh, we never had spaghetti or lasagna or anything. It was beef,
Bean taters. Oh,
meat
yeah.
and potatoes
Yeah.
every meal, especially when we were filling silo. Yeah, the other thing Aunt Ruth did, I always called her Aunt Ruth and Uncle Chuck. The other thing she did is she made fresh donuts 6 days a week. Cinnamon in a big plastic bag, and had cinnamon and sugar. Shook them up. We always had them in the barn. We had them done, and a breakfast to die for. We usually started out with pink grapefruit called cut. Had 3 eggs, 5 slices of bacon, and sometimes oatmeal.
Sometimes it was
And it was just
or pancakes.
or pancakes. It was a great experience. I would go back there. You can't.
You didn't gain weight because you worked hard enough.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. When I was playing football, I weighed about 165, 70 pounds. They wanted me to get to 190. And Larry Hines came up to the farm, wanted to weigh me, and I weighed 4 pounds less. Yeah, he eats like a horse. But when you do have to do the physical work that they do,
Oh, yeah.
you aren't going to gain
Oh,
any.
yeah.
No.
I made up for it later in life. It was a great experience. They treated me like family. And it wasn't until I was getting ready to retire that I found out from the time I was 12 years old on, to work for them, they paid all my social, the input of your social security. So I had a credit for those years.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Oh, that's interesting. Whoa. Cool.
Anyone have any questions?
Sure.
Kevin mentioned, the Sullivan boys that worked for them. We used to ride the church choir on Thursday nights with Ruth. And she always took Danny up to Griddisville Crossroad to spend time with his mother.
Okay.
Then we had to pick him up and that choir would go up and pick him up and take him back to the farm. And she quite often would call Cindy and I to come and get the cows with her, go for a walk, especially when your cousins were our age that were there
Yeah.
visiting.
Yeah.
And always had those sugar cookies with a raisin in the center.
Oh, yeah. And those.
And I remember helping, I probably was preschool, early elementary. My mother helping her paper all 7 of the bedrooms upstairs.
Really?
Oh, my.
Mom was good at papering.
Well, yeah, I have a question. Did you hay it and all that?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have bales of hay or loose hay?
Not at first.
No, at
When I
first it was
learned to drive
loose.
that John Deere, Chuck was driving around the field right above the tenant house. And I went up there and he said, "You wanna learn to drive the tractor?" He had me stand up there and about after 2 rounds, he got on the back with his dad. Because you had the tractor, a wagon, and then a hay loader that came up the back. Need everyone a little to the left. Yeah.
He got a kicker baler in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And it was my job to still stack the bales. So you get more on it if you stack them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we used to do that as we were little. My dad was a mechanic also, and he actually, with the baler, he made the bales smaller because we were so young. But you were talking about that hill, and it brought back some memories because we had bales of hay, and behind we had a Massey Harris, but we had a Ford, and I was the Ford. And that doggone wagon it had all the control. The tractor just went where we had some scary times, and it's giving me chills just thinking about it. Wow, we were lucky we were alive.
Coming off that hill was always a trip.
You had mentioned Jamie Van Oster. I mean, when I was helping there, he was just a little guy, 10, 11 years old. Right? Always pestering us to help. Well, we had this one cow that had been running along the fence and caught her back teeth on one of the bars, right? So he's pestering to help. So I look at Eric and I kind of nod towards that cow and he's like, "Yeah, okay." Well, he went in there and he crossed the front teeth on this side, the back teeth on the side, the front teeth on the other side. He grabbed a hold of that back teeth on the far side and that cow kicked him right out in the middle of the aisle. I have apologized to him since I've been back home because I was a part of that, but.
Grandpa, when he first got the kicker baler, I was pretty young, and he put the bales down to 50 pounds. Roughly. But by the end of that summer, he had them back up to 75. So I could handle them.
Yeah, and when you're back there stacking, it does increase your agility because you gotta get the heck out of the way.
Yeah. I got hit in the back with a barrel one time.
One time. Learning experience.
Any other questions?
Any more questions?
I just learned some history about how my dad's family came to acquire the farm that they sold some to the Williamses.
Oh, okay.
And it was sometime, his great-granddad Andrews had gone out west, and he came back with a bag of gold worth $7,000, and he bought the farm that I'm living on right now. And Dad also said that he thought it was gonna be 100, but they surveyed it themselves, and it ended up being 112 acres that he sold to the Williams. Just something I just learned in the last 2 days.
Like I said, I didn't look at any of the deeds or anything, but the compilation of it all was a little over 400 acres.
Which was big.
Yeah.
I always said that our fellows should work on the farm for some early. Every kid did that, boy, we'd have a different country.
That's why I went to college.
I tell kids nowadays, when you get done with high school, go to college, get a real job.
Yeah.
And I also worked at Hadco Printed Circuits the first year they came down. They came down from New Hampshire to lose money by buying Robinson. They didn't know the work ethics of farm boys and girls because after the end of the first year, they were named #1 individually owned printed circuit board in the United States, and for 5 years straight, they built bigger than a football field building on every year. Yeah, Hadco. Hod, Arvin, Dana Company.
Hadco made circuit boards for IBM/Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, right down there by Broadway or whatever they call it. Yeah, we called it Hadco Printed Circuits.
Thank you all very much.
future if you want to do